So 3 paragraphs, 3 body paragraphs for your common mod essay and any essay you do, unless you're doing a comparative essay between two different texts, in which case, which is likely for module A for your for English Advanced, where you'll compare to, you might want to do 4 body paragraphs for that structure. Otherwise, 3 body paragraphs for any essay that's just about one text. And when I say one text, you might be doing a set of poems, like you might be studying Slessor, or when you do module B, you might be studying T.S. Eliot, and you'll study multiple poems, but they're still one text. That's all one text. They're almost like chapters in a book. Create your structure. Choose a good question was step 1. Make sure you have a question. Choose a question that is an ideal question for you. Like, if I got a question in an exam, because you are going to get a question, what would I love to have as a question? And make sure it's a realistic question that's based on the module description, like the rubric. It has some of those keywords in it that you've looked at. Make sure you have a strong framework, a strong structure. And the structure I always recommend, firstly, a problem. So what's the core tension? What is the core tension that you're exploring? And typically, this is established at the beginning of the text. So you can almost follow it chronologically in terms of how you select your evidence throughout your essay. And then the second body paragraph can be about the consequence of that tension. And it might even be the struggle as a consequence. So what happens as a result of that problem? So maybe someone lives in a world where they're oppressed and they have no freedom. Okay, set that up in your first paragraph. Second one, well, individuals then respond in this way. So what's the problem? How do people respond to that problem? And then the third paragraph would be, is there a resolution? How does this all end up? So what was the tension? What was the consequence of that tension, the direct consequence for people? How did they respond? How did they struggle against it? And then finally, in the third body paragraph, was there a resolution? What was it? Were people able to set aside their differences and find unity? There's all of these possibilities, but the text that you're studying will typically follow that progression in all cases, right? All texts have that. They establish a complication, there's a problem, then there is a kind of struggle, there's a journey as a result of that. And then there's ultimately some kind of resolution. Maybe there's not a resolution and you need to discuss that. But I would be selecting my evidence chronologically, almost from the beginning, the middle, and the end for my first paragraph, my second paragraph, and my third paragraph as a rule of thumb. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not saying you can't use evidence from the start of the text in your last body paragraph, but that's how I would be framing the essay to begin with, because then it gives you material that's likely to be very adaptable to any question. Another key tip that's going to help you to be really adaptable to any essay question that you get asked is to include in your draft base essay, right, your core essay, you want to make sure that the type of evidence you've used is related to those broader compositional components of the text. So the structure of the text, the form of the text. Like if it's a film, what's significant about it being a film? Talk a lot about the cinematography, the way it's shot, the soundtrack. Talk about general techniques, macro techniques. They are going to be adaptable to any question. There's no question that wouldn't allow you to talk about the general form or structure or style of a text. But there are questions where maybe the simile or the metaphor or the personification you were using isn't that relevant. They often are still relevant if you've chosen evidence that ties to the bigger ideas that are explored in the text. But certainly those stylistic elements, like the narrative voice, is it first person narration or third person narration? The general structure, the general style of the text, those components are going to be relevant and useful. They're going to actually give you marks. They're going to improve the quality of your response for almost any question. So include in those draft essays a lot of form, at least one mention of form or style or the genre per paragraph. If you can get more in, go for 2 and combine those broader elements like the voice, the perspective, the structure. If you're doing a play, for instance, is there a soliloquy? Is there a monologue? Are there stage directions that are important? If you're doing a film, the soundtrack, things that are very general, combine those with the more specific techniques that you might find on a particular page in a particular paragraph, okay? Make sure you balance your evidence in that way. That's going to be a more adaptable essay, and it's going to be a more sophisticated essay because you're covering more elements of the text as a whole. You're appreciating the whole of the text, not just small parts of it by zooming in on certain paragraphs or pages or lines of a poem. That's a big mistake that a lot of students make, actually. They zoom in on all these specific lines in the text and they find the metaphor, they find the hyperbole, they find some very specific technique, and then they put all of those pieces of analysis together, and that forms the body paragraph. Now, whilst your points might be quite relevant and effective, the type of evidence you've got there is quite limited. You haven't appreciated the broader composition of the text. Why was it designed in that particular way? Why is it written in first person and not third person? Right? Why does it have that soundtrack? Why are there soliloquies throughout? You need to mix in those specific techniques with the broader ones, and you need to do that every paragraph of every essay you write for year 12, year 11, whatever you're doing. And that is going to give you more balance and more sophistication throughout your analysis.